Welcome to the Sexpert interview. Today is my special guest, Belah Rose, and she has a podcast that I listen to called Delight Your Marriage. In fact, her podcast is ranked in the top 30 relationship podcasts available. She's an internationally acclaimed sexpert, sex and intimacy coach, and her podcast has been heard by hundreds of thousands of people in over 155 countries worldwide. My wife bought one of her books, Delight Your Husband, a few years ago, and we're hooked by her sincerity and the Christian values that she brings. So that's a great benefit, I think, to having someone like you, Belah, today. Also, she has many different programs, which maybe we'll talk about. And anyway, she's a genuine person and has a great message to share. So welcome today.
Thanks, Dan. I'm so grateful to be here.
Great. Hey, I want to know, how'd you get started? Like, did you ever always want to be an intimacy coach?
Great question. Not at all. Oh my goodness. So I think a lot of times we really, the phrase "our mess can be our message," right? So my first marriage, I was just really didn't understand sexual intimacy to a man. I was so insecure and humiliated and resentful even that he would want me to do such sinful things. And I was mad that he wasn't pure before marriage like I was. And we just had so much discord around sex, which resulted in divorce. And then I spent time away from God. I grew up in a Christian household, but then I was hurt so badly by a Christian man that I spent time away from God and just really pursued sex on my own. Just realized, you know what? Sex isn't a big deal. It's clearly not valued by my ex-husband, so I don't need to value it. So basically, I learned everything that I could learn outside of God's will. So lots of sad experience that I, really wish I didn't have. And then when I got married again, fell in love with a man who did honor and respect me and treated me well. Then when we got married, the being treated well pretty much fizzled out, and sex was strong in our marriage. But I was like, what's wrong here? Why are we still having discord and strife? And like, sex is great. What's going on? And it wasn't until I really understood, practically speaking, what the nature of a man is around needing respect and needing admiration as a man. When I got that final piece in place, now marriage is incredible, and sexual intimacy is a huge, huge piece of having a marriage strong. So really, it was that desire to help educate other women. Like, guys, we can do this. This is important, and we can go from real challenge and sadness and despair into a really wonderful marriage. And that's where it all started.
That's great. So what were the steps you took to figure out that he needed more respect, or what changes did you have to make in yourself to make the relationship better?
Yeah, I love that question, how you posed it, the changes that I made in myself, because what I thought was the answer was I needed to change him, and then everything would be better. So that was
if the other person did all the changing and I didn't.
That would fix it all if they would just do their thing. Yeah, but we can only control ourselves. And the beautiful thing, if you're listening, you probably are an action taker. You probably are seeking truth. You're probably seeking wisdom, which is awesome. So you get to be the one that takes the first step. That's a grace. That's awesome. So for me, I started reading books. I just was tired of crying myself to sleep. I was just like, there has got to be another way. So part of even doing my podcast and interviewing other experts and reading others' books and doing others' programs, it was like, I need to figure this thing out. What am I doing wrong? And so that was the key, was really to understand, practically speaking, what does it mean to respect him and treat him in the way that he receives love, rather than treating him like the way I receive love. So it's kind of the idea of, I give this idea with my clients a lot, is, if you're going to love someone else well, and you know they love cookies, you're not going to come and bring them a cake for their birthday. That is not loving them well. Even if you love cake, you're going to give them cookies, and then they're going to feel loved. And hopefully on your birthday, they're going to give you a cake. So the idea is you find out what your spouse loves and you give that to them. And when they feel filled up, it becomes easy to translate into how you feel filled up. So for me, I wanted to be cherished. I wanted to be known. I wanted to feel safe in my marriage. And so what those three principles that I teach is that, things like romance were important to me. So when he would skip out on every holiday because he had to work and never make it up to me, and he would forget my birthday, and we'd never go anywhere special for me, it was really heartbreaking. So I had to shift the way I thought about it and really realize that, there are really good things about my husband. And I need to focus on those good things, the things that I can be grateful for, so that he stops feeling like a failure as a husband, and he starts shifting the way he sees himself by my words towards him. So when I'm frustrated and mad that he's not taking me anywhere, I'm full of resentment and unforgiveness and anger. And all that does is make everything worse, because he's like, see, I'm a terrible husband. I just don't want to be around her. I'm not going to, she's not attractive to me. I don't want to be there. But instead, if I see the glimmers of good things that he's doing for me, and I started to say, gosh, honey, thank you for surprising me. Thank you for this meal, even if it was a TV dinner or whatever. Like, he didn't actually have to make that for us. He didn't have to do that one dish in the dishes. Like, he didn't have to do that one thing. So when I started to be grateful for the tiny things, it started to grow into much bigger things that ultimately transformed our entire marriage, because I changed.
Gotcha. And then likewise, he responded. And now does he take you out to nice restaurants to remember your birthday?
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. I'll say COVID has slowed down actually going to restaurants, but yeah, he's completely become a different man because I've become a different woman.
That's great. The question I want to ask is, so you come to a realization that in order to love your spouse the way they want to be loved, that requires you to do a lot of scary things on your own.
Yeah.
That might take you far out of your comfort zone sometimes. And you kind of need to make a decision if you're going to really do that or not, or what's right or not. Is it really for the greater good? Or is it or am I just accommodating him and I'm going to feel resentful for just constantly accommodating? How do you navigate all that?
Yeah, a really good question. Really good. I love the idea of thinking about the things we don't want to do for our spouse as being scary, because I think a lot of times we don't name it as such. We kind of call it a lot of things, but we don't realize it's a lot of times fear, because it's vulnerable. So for a wife, it's vulnerable to initiate, especially when you've rejected for so long, or it's vulnerable initiating almost any time. For a husband, for men too, yes. Absolutely. For different reasons. Yep. And for a husband, it's also vulnerable to try to do something special for your wife, because she might criticize you. She might critique what you've done. And there's often a lot of history for that. And it feels like, oh, nothing will ever be good enough for either the husband or the wife. So how do you navigate this resentment, was the question. Like, are you just going to be a doormat for the rest of your marriage and just think, oh, I'm just going to take it and resign yourself to a bad marriage? Well, I think the piece that's really vital is strategy and a long-term mindset. So what is really important is for people to not look at their marriage with if you're at a 2 out of 10 in your marriage, you're not going to do the same actions that an 8 or 9 out of 10 marriage would. So it wouldn't make sense for me to give someone advice, and I say this so often, you need to be thinking about where you are right now in your marriage, in your emotional, spiritual, and physical intimacy, and then take just the next step for your marriage, just one step further. So if you think about kind of like a line graph, if you will. So if you think about being a 2 out of 10, and then that's going to be on the marital health spectrum. 0 out of 10 is the, what is that? X-axis? Yeah, X-axis. And then on the Y-axis, up and down, is your level of openness with your spouse. So if you're a 2 out of 10, you're not going to be 10 out of 10 open with your spouse, because that means you would share all this negative stuff, all your feelings, all your resentment, all your negative stuff. But instead, you're going to share just the positives, just the little good things, the little glimmers that you see in your spouse. And then when you get to be a 3 out of 10, you're going to be open about a little bit more of those good things. And then a 4 out of 10, a 5. And eventually when you get to be 7, 8 out of 10, you're more open. You're more able to share. You compliment in the direction that you want your spouse to go. When you're farther along, you have playfulness as a bedrock of your marriage. You have more of yourself in the marriage. But if you don't have the strategy of starting at a 2 out of 10, you can't get to an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Because if you're open about all the negative stuff, you're going to just go backwards. So that's in the same way of you're serving first, you're loving first, you're getting your marriage healthy, where your spouse is fulfilled in the marriage, and then they're going to be more receptive to hearing what you love or what you would enjoy. So if you just think about it, the long-term view, you might have 30, 40, 50, 60 years 80 years left. I don't know how long you've been married. Some of my clients are like 45 years in. Like, you still can think about it in the long game and not think, I've got to, make all of my convictions known right now. And instead really employ strategy in fixing your marriage and making it intimately free.
That's great. So there's a correlation between openness and the quality of the marriage. Can you talk on that? Do you think openness has to do with intimacy?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely it does. So as you get higher up in the marital health spectrum, you are going to be more open. And openness and vulnerability are really very similar words and very similar concepts. And you're going to be more vulnerable in sex. You're going to be more vulnerable in your emotions, and you're going to feel more connected to your spouse the more open you are. But you have to be cautious of when is the right timing for that.
That's great. Any specific stories you can share from people you've counseled that may have been at a 2 or a 3, and the specific strategies they've employed to help them get to the higher level?
Yeah, absolutely. So one gentleman's coming to mind, and I'm just going to make up a name here, Frank. His wife had left him after just so much rage and strife between them. He felt very disrespected. Sex was not happening in their marriage to a large degree. And she was very controlling and disrespectful. And so, I mean, just the perfect storm, right? Both of them were getting at each other negatively in the way that they receive love, right? The absolute worst kinds of dynamics. And so what he did was work in my Masculinity Reclaimed program. And what he did was really learn what it is that she needs to feel love. She needs to be listened to. She needs to be known for who she is. She needs to be cared about and thought about. And he needs to go through a process of apologizing for what he owns in the relationship. And then he was able to actually attract her back. And she then, he talks about how their marriage became more intimate than it ever had been after over 20 years of being married. And for her, she said that the miracle she saw in her husband was worth every penny. Like, it was just this shocking change. So he had to do a lot of work. And it wasn't until he really spent the focus and really decided for these months, I'm going to become a different man because my marriage is worth it for it to change. So yeah, he employed the ideas, specifically the principles of her needing to be known, her needing to feel safe emotionally, and then finally wholeheartedly cherished. And yeah, she responded. She ended up working with me as well, kind of in response to him working with me. And then it just, yeah, kind of exploded into this wonderful thing. He says every day now is like magic. So it's amazing.
That's great. And I think you'd agree, women are drawn to strength, right? That's a masculine attribute that's really attractive. And it takes a lot of strength to apologize or to step up and change. And
100%. Yeah.
it takes that strength, but that strength is oh so sexy.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, which, in our society, we think vulnerability is weakness, but the truth is, I mean, that's courage is not, I love Brene Brown, there's no possibility of courage without vulnerability, without saying, gosh, I was wrong. That was a mistake. I'm sorry. And owning it. I have so many clients, women that are like, he'll never apologize. He never, and it's like, it's actually a strength to apologize. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's cool. Great. Speaking of courage, we've talked about in the past and on your show and in your books, how, and in your programs too, some things require you to face your fears and overcome them so that you can be a better lover in and out of the bedroom. Can you talk on that a little bit? Specifically, like what are some specific strategies women and men could do to help overcome certain obstacles they have in their marriage?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think a big one, and Dan, I imagine that a lot of the listeners are men really hoping that their wife will be more free and interested and desirous in intimacy. But I think a lot of times women as well really are looking for guidance and help in insecurity in certain ways. And the truth of the matter is both men and women are insecure, as we mentioned, for different reasons. I wanted to give just some very specific guidance on helping that insecurity. So one is assume that your spouse is insecure around sex. That's going to sound strange, but if you assume that the other person is insecure, it makes you more confident, because then your role is to encourage them, is to make them feel good. And so I want to just share a little bit about what men are insecure about and what women are insecure about, and how either party can make the other person feel better. So women are usually insecure about her body, whether it's good enough. She wants whether or not she knows what to do. She's also insecure about whether or not he's thinking about other women when making love to her. She also is maybe insecure about if this activity is sinful or wrong. And another one is, does he think the position or the activity or whatever, the look of what's going on is gross to him? And these are things that he probably immediately, as I say them, are like, no way. To a man, he's like, I love the visuals. I love what she's doing. It's amazing to me. But the thing is, as a man, you can help her feel more confident and more secure by being very vocal about what you like and all the positives. It's never helpful to critique. It's never helpful for criticism. The only thing that is helpful is to acknowledge and appreciate the good that she's doing. So yeah, maybe the lights are off, maybe the sheets are up, but thank God that she made love to you. Oh my gosh. So you can just share how amazing it felt and how amazing her body is and how incredible it is that she's willing to do that for you. Those are the kinds of comments that will slowly help her to open up more and help her, think the long game. Once again, you're going to share the good. You're not going to share the critical. You're not going to say, I wish if you could only just do X, Y, and Z. That's going to make her be like, well, never mind. You're never satisfied. You don't like what I do. And again, it increases those insecurities, which we never go towards something we don't feel like we're a winner at. We go towards things that we feel like we're awesome at. So for a man to decide, you know what, I'm going to make her feel better in sex. And the truth is, when you have that mindset is, how can I make her feel better? it's going to make you more confident. So that's a piece for men specifically. And then for women specifically, just to kind of share some of his insecurities, is a big one is whether or not she's attracted to him. And again, for women, it's like, yeah, I'm attracted to him. That has nothing to do with our sex life. But the truth is, for men, if they're not having sex generously and frequently, it makes him feel like she is not attracted to him. Another one, which again for women sounds crazy, is he big enough? That's what men care about. But the truth is, with all my work with women, I have never ever heard a woman concerned about her husband's size as being too big. Never, ever. So women just don't care about that in real life. Like, movies are ridiculous. In real life, in real marriages, they don't care. It's wonderful. Another one that men have insecurities around is, does he know how to please her? And a huge one is, will she reject him or judge him for wanting something, or just wanting intimacy in general? So as a woman, she can really help him by making it clear that she loves his member, that she loves what they're doing together, that he is good enough in bed, that he does please her. And again, it's just consistently encouraging the good. So if he touches her a certain way, say that she loves him touching her body in certain ways. Moving his hands, but always being positive about what he's doing is always going to make it better. And even just touching him around his member is going to make him feel, not just around his member, on his member, is going to make him feel so much more loved than she can ever imagine. And I think one piece that's really key for women is to recognize that with the insecurity around, is something sinful or should I be doing a certain act? Something that I teach is to really reframe a lot of sexual activities. And that includes like renaming them. It means just getting the world's mindset outside of your marriage bed, because yes, sexual sin is all over the place, whether it's movies or X-rated stuff or affairs or all, just everything. But that's not God's truth. God made sex. God made sex as holy, as good. I mean, he designed it. It's the enemy that tried to pervert it. And Dan, you teach this all the time, so you know exactly. But yeah, so we don't want to bring any kind of potential mindsets from the perverted stuff. So what I teach for women, like, why not just rename things? If there's a hang up on a certain word or phrase, like, rename it. So men, some of the things they like extremely crave is oral sex. They're receiving it. And a lot of the words that, I think is in pornography and that sort of things, I don't like. I hate them, in fact. So I just renamed it. Penny is what I call it. And it's just this completely holy, good interaction between a husband and wife, where she can bring him incredible joy using her mouth and hand. And it's really just changed for so many of my clients to change the way you think about things. So I'll talk about a particular wife who just felt like sex was not only just for him, but a lot of the stuff, as growing up, just really in the purity mindset of, she doesn't do a lot of things because they're not holy, they're not good. Biblically speaking, she didn't know if they were good. And so her husband was a good man and was kind, and but she just couldn't bring herself to do things like Penny for him because she just felt it was wrong. And so when she really started to see that sex and all the activities is good and holy and God ordained, and there's so many Bible references on, you should be inebriated by your wife's love. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you can fully enjoy. Now her husband told me that she does road penny and like just all sorts of things that he just can't even believe that she does for him, but it's because she had to really reframe and realize this is not dirty. This is not wrong. This is not gross. It doesn't mean that she's less than. It means that she gets to give her husband amazing pleasure. Like, what is more powerful from a woman than that?
That's great. Fantastic. So let's say you're a couple and on your scale, you're already at a 7 or an 8, or maybe even a 10. What are your black belt sex tips that you would have for a couple like that? This is a couple, things are already going well. Now they're ready to go to even to the next level.
Yeah. Well, so I have to be careful, right? Because I'm sure everyone is listening to this like, okay, great. I'm going to ignore what Bella said about gratitude and go straight to these tips because that's the thing I want to be very cautious and careful about here.
You can't get there unless your core is healthy first, right? You got to have everything else taken care of. But
yes.
my fear is there's too much advice out there that's assuming you're not in a good place, when I think a lot of people listening to this are in a good place in their marriage, yet you don't hear enough of the other good stuff that can make it even better.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I think a big thing is teasing is really key to marriages in and out of the bedroom. So it's interesting because husbands want to be teased like with sexy images, text messages, phrases. Those are the things that husbands want to be teased with, which is great. So wives, there's some good advice is to just throughout the day is touch him on his member, just be like, hey honey, would you like to see something? And then he walks into the room and you're half clothed, or you show him what panties you've got on, or that sort of thing is really super fun. And it just makes your marriage really exciting for him. And so the important thing to recognize is women don't really want that from their husbands. So again, with the cake and the cookies, don't give your wife a cake. She wants the cookies. Like, be clear. Just because you want a cake doesn't mean you need to give her that cake. So she probably wants more of the romance and the, giving her more like cuddles and teases around that. So like, cuddle her for a moment and then get up and do the dishes or something that like is that she wants, but don't give her everything in that moment. So you got to be careful. This isn't like this isn't a withholding affection type of teasing. So it really is, like you said, Dan, with a 7, 8, 9, where non-sexual touch is a huge part of your marriage already. But then there's additions of like, kissing her on the lips and then on the neck and then going ahead to the other room. Like, those are things that tease her rather than are like, oh my gosh, sex is coming. Don't do it. He really has to tease her without strings are going to be attached every time he kisses her or touches her. It's really key for her to actually be interested in sex, for him to tease her throughout the day in the way that she wants to be teased. And then the other thing for men is I would encourage just as much energy and discovery for her enjoyment as you want her to have for yours. So what unfortunately happens sometimes is, he either has an orgasm or before, after, or what have you. And then it's kind of like her whole, sexual desire, like it just isn't as important as his is the mindset. So, if you want her to care about your sexuality, you really have to care about hers. So that includes very slow approach to sex. So it can be, kissing her fingertips to her arms, to her shoulders, to her neck, and necks are super erogenous zones for women, to her collarbones, like really spend time on all these things rather than going straight to the genitals, straight to intercourse. That's just not necessarily what she is going to be super fulfilled by in sex.
That's great. Good advice.
Awesome.
Good. And to passionately and truly love her for who she is, not just for sex. That's
Yeah,
really about cherishing and the art of loving, wouldn't you say?
absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I think is so important is that that confidence in the bedroom is confidence outside of the bedroom and vice versa. And one way that you can get confident in the bedroom is really knowing your worth and your calling in this world. Um, like I said, I've worked with people who've been married just a couple years to 45, 55 years. And it's really sad when I see people who have been chasing sex their whole lives. And my encouragement is to decide a season. You're going to spend 3 months really pursuing a healthy sex life. You're going to pursue how to love your spouse well. You're going to pursue getting super strategic. You're going to pursue, fully forgiving your spouse for the past so you can move into completely motivated to serve and love them well. Give it a 3-month time period or 6 months, but don't say, this is going to be my passion for the rest, like these years and years and years. Like, give it a break eventually, like focus on what makes you happy, how to be passionate about. There's so many problems in the world that need help and need people who are excited to fix them. So let your marriage be what it's supposed to be, to fuel the rest of your life, but don't let it be the only focus of your life. Like Dan, you and I talk about sex every single day because we want to help others who are suffering. But unless that's somebody's work, that they are helping others in this space, when somebody's whole existence is wanting their spouse to fill them up sexually, that is a problem. And so my encouragement is to really get pieces of your life that are just so fulfilling, so that sex is not the only thing that makes a man feel like a man. And sex is not the only thing that a wife feels attracts her or makes her attractive. There are so many other things. So I guess some practical things is limit people's exposure to TV. Obviously, sexual content, limit that. Get off screens, go outside, do things that are passionate, that are fun, that make you feel filled up. Those are things that are actually going to make you much more attractive to your spouse. And ultimately, I think in line with God's will for you.
That's great. Thank you very much. If they want to find you, how do they find you?
Yeah, well, I would love to just give a couple of resources since I've, for men, if you're wondering why your wife rejects you or what the challenges are, why she's blocking your intimacy, I have a free PDF to give you. Go to delightyourmarriage.com/7 blocks. It's just the number 7 blocks. And that's for men. And then for women, for those who want to really break out of your insecurities and seduce your husband well, you can go to delightyourmarriage.com/tips. And those are my favorite seduction tips you can download.
That's great. Well, thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me, Dan. This is an awesome project. I'm really excited for it.
Yep. We'll catch you again.